On this session of Professional Edge, we are talking about why evaluate your risk. My name's Sean Todd, tax attorney, CPA, and certified financial planner, host here of the Professional Edge, and I appreciate your time listening in. So everyone talks about how things are going great, everything, how much more am I going to gain in my portfolio, but we never discuss what about the risk within that portfolio. Well, we take your portfolio holdings. Here's one thing we do at estate management counselors is we take the account statements, we plug these in some software, and then that way we can tell you your exposure on this portfolio. The worst quarter is off by 36% or 43% or whatever that percentage is. And then we look at the client and say, okay, would you be okay getting a statement 30 days from now and your portfolio is down 30%. So $1 million portfolio has dropped to $700,000. Would you get excited? Or is your plan in force in place that you are able to withstand a 30% down drop in the portfolio? And this is based on historical returns of saying what the worst case quarter was. And then we also look at it obviously on the positive and say, okay, this portfolio also had the best quarter from this time to this time, and it went up by 26%. Would you be okay with that? And they sort of sit back up in their chair and look at us and they say, oh yeah, I'd be okay with that. That would be incredible. I would buy a new car, or I would schedule a vacation, spend the winnings. So the bigger risk for our listeners here on the Professional Edge is, are you understanding of the risk within your portfolio? And a lot of individuals are not. And here's one thing which has come out. It's called Boomer's Candy. That's what we refer to it. And it basically says, you know what? We're going to participate in the S&P 500 up to a certain point. So we're going to get capped out. So let's put the cap at 12%. So your greed factor kicks in and says, wow, I don't want to hold it back to 12% because the market's been doing 15, 18, 20% the past 3 years. It's going to continue to do that going on infinitum. And therefore, my greed sets in and I would not be comfortable with a 12% cap. Okay, let's think about that for a second. The market's not going to continue 20% annualized returns. So we got to get back down to the average, which is roughly 11%. So with that in mind, we say, okay, the cap is 12%. I'm not talking about an annuity or anything like that. It's 100% liquid. Annuities usually lock up your money for, anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And I have different comments on different shows on those annuity products. And, if it takes 70 pages in a document, it's probably bent inside the contract towards the insurance company. So with that said, we're going to cap your gain at 12%. So if the S&P returns 18, 19, 20%, you're only going to get 12. Okay. Now, what's the downside? Well, we can protect the downside up to 20% in one scenario. So if the market goes down by 12%, guess what? You don't lose any money. What if it goes down by 18%? Again, you don't participate in that loss side. So what if it drops by 25%? Well, the first 20% you're protected, but then you would participate in that last 5% of the drop. So if the market dropped 25%, your portfolio would only lose 5%. That is something to sort of put a collar around your investment capital. That is very important as a soon-to-be retiree. That's number one. And number two, you, the listener who have been in retirement, let's say 3, 4, 5 years, the market's been great, but what have you done to lock in some of that principal within your portfolio? That's where this comes in. We refer to it as Boomer's Candy. It caps the upside, so we can't be too greedy and get all the upside, but it also protects you on the downside. And that downside protection is something a lot of our listeners that come into the office, either at Columbus or here in Atlanta, or even virtually. I mean, we have clients that we get on Zoom calls and they're in Texas, they're in California, up on the East Coast. That's not a big deal. So we counsel them and say, all right, does this make financial sense for you to lock in some of this investment capital? Yeah, great. If you get the 12%, awesome, incredible. Lock it in. Okay, you gave up the 6%, but you have that sleep at night factor. If the market has a correction of 20%, you're not going to participate. Again, that is some risk protection. If it drops 25%, you can look at your friends and say, look, here's a strategy that I had. You're in the market, you lost 25%. I'm in the market and I lost 5%. That is a valuable conversation to have to see if this makes financial sense for you on your portfolio or a portion of your portfolio. What you're going to spend over the next 3 to 5 years. Evaluate your risk within the portfolio and say, hey, you know what? I know I'm going to need this money over the next 3 to 5 years. I want to protect that principal, keep the downside risk to a minimum. I'm okay to cap the top at 12% in this scenario. And that way I know my spending principal is going to be locked in. So to have that conversation, give our office a call at 404-250-9798. That number again, 404-250-9798. The other thing you might want to do, if you're definitely not while you're driving, you can visit our website at emcthebundle.com. That is Echo Mary Charlie, thebundle.com. And we are providing this integrated strategy for our listeners here on the Professional Edge. We evaluate your income taxes. We then get your estate plan set up and we evaluate your portfolio all in one very discounted price. And that is an incentive to get you to take action on your planning for that safe and secure retirement. And unfortunately, half of all our listeners here on the Professional Edge don't have any estate plan, or they created an estate plan when their kids were born and now their kids are graduating from college. You know who I'm talking to. So that is the incentive to get moving forward, plan, because we all know we're not going to make this out of here alive. So go ahead and take advantage of that opportunity. That is Echo Mary Charlie, EMCthebundle.com. So back to evaluating your risk. So on this Boomer Candy, this sort of vehicle that we use, is not an annuity. It's not for 9 years. It's not for 10 years. There's no surrender charges. It's basically a 1 year sort of time frame. Now, you can always get out of it, and it may not have the same protections, but it's not going to be a complete debacle. So set it up, 1 year time frame, and if you get 8% in the market, you're going to get all 100% of that 8%. And the market is being defined as the S&P 500 index. There's other indexes we can work with, but S&P, everyone has heard of that. So again, that 12%, 20% downside. So we cap it in between that range. So again, money that you're thinking about or knowing that you're going to spend in retirement for that next 3 to 5 years, this may be a very viable option to make sure that you take away that substantial downside risk within your portfolio. That is a very worthwhile conversation to have, an evaluation to have. And being a tax attorney, a CPA, and a certified financial planner, this is where we're putting into the objective thinking like a lawyer. Lawyers are trained to think, what's the worst case scenario? Well, the worst case scenario is you retire, you have a spend, you're going to go on some vacations, some trips that you planned your lifetime, and lo and behold, the market has a 30% adjustment. Your portfolio just lost $300,000. How does that make you feel when you first start your retirement? So again, evaluating your risk is as important, if not more important, than allocating the portfolio to get those monster gains in the market that you're trying to accomplish. So again, that conversation starts by giving our office a call at 404-250-9798. That number again, 404-250-9798. So mentioned Boomer's Candy, got to have the discussion. Again, if you're listening to this podcast or down here in Columbus on WDAK, then we can meet here at the Cunningham Center. We can meet up in Atlanta if you want to test your driving skills with all our traffic up here in the new interchanges. Or we hop on a Zoom call. And again, the first one is complimentary, gratis. No dinero needs to exchange hands. So again, start that conversation, 404-250-9798. That number again, 404-250-9798. I appreciate you listening to The Professional Edge. More coming up in the next session.
We've all thought about it. Everyone listening will need one. Not having one can cause untold heartache, family conflict escalating to the point of a lawsuit. One simple thing that avoids all that: an effective estate plan. As a practicing tax attorney, Sean Todd with Estate Management Counselors has completed over 1,000 estate plans during his 15 years of professional practice. He can help you implement an effective estate plan, coordinate your financial accounts, and make sure you have named the proper beneficiaries to maximize your tax savings. Call 877-654-9798 today and let tax attorney Sean Todd help you implement an effective estate plan. Call 877-654-9798 today. As a tax attorney CPA for over 15 years, Sean Todd has implemented over 1,000 individual estate plans. He has recently authored an especially helpful guide, How to Unlock the Ultimate Estate Plan. This guide has helped many individuals to understand the benefits of an estate plan and how to avoid unintended disasters. Sean has made every attempt to write this in plain English. To receive this valuable guide, How to Unlock the Ultimate Estate Plan, call 1-877-654-9798 and request your complimentary copy today, or by emailing your request to info@emcadvisors.net.